Assalamualaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Camellias Bloom podcast, a support networking platform for convert sisters all around the globe. The Camellias Bloom podcast is a place where I share our stories of struggles and challenges which we all go through as convert Muslimas. This is a place where you can feel safe and supported by other sisters who understand where you are coming from. The Camellias Bloom is for all of us to rediscover Islam together as one, inshallah, and to let you know that you aren't alone on your journey to Allah. I am Khadija, your host, and let's get started with today's episode, inshallah. Hello, my lady camellias, and welcome back to this week's episode 31. I hope everyone is doing well on this blessed Friday and had a chance to check out last week's episode with Sister Stacy. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and check it out. All right, so let's just dive right into this week's episode. Grab your cup of halal goodness and let's welcome our guest for this week, Sister Melissa. Assalamualaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sister Melissa. Welcome. And how are you doing?
Walaikum salam, sister. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on your podcast, mashallah.
You are very welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, sure. I actually have reverted to Islam in 1997. So it's been quite some time, alhamdulillah. I have German, Italian, Scottish background. I am from Canada, have 6 beautiful children, alhamdulillah, which I'm currently homeschooling, alhamdulillah. And it's been quite a journey, transitioning. Actually, when I converted, I was still in my teens. So I was quite young when I found Islam, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. So can you tell us a little bit more about that journey? What was your life like before Islam?
Yeah, so anytime someone asks me this question, the first thing I think about is dark space. And the reason I say that is because Islam brought such a noor, such a light to my life, and still continues to do that after such a long period of time. And every time I go back to thinking what my life was before Islam, it was very empty. So I typically, I think, did what every other, teenager did in the West, experimented with different things and, lived a life where there was a lot of freedom to do, whatever I wanted to do. And, it wasn't, and saying that, you would think that a person enjoyed that lifestyle. And for me, it wasn't the case. Every time I think back, I'm always saying, alhamdulillah, for where I am. Because back then it was just lost. It felt empty. It felt dark. And where I am today, it's just, that you've been guided. So I'm so grateful to where I am today. Like I had said, I converted very young. So I was still in high school, and my transition was very quick into Islam. And so I didn't have a lot of experience because I was still a teenager.
Right.
So, just going to school, hanging out with my friends.
Wow, subhanAllah, I can't imagine at such a young age, finding Islam. So were you religious at all, growing up? Did you have any other religions?
So no, we are those families that call ourselves Christians, but we really don't put any effort into learning our own faith.
Right.
So I would identify myself as a Christian, but in terms of the way I practiced Islam, that was not the way we practiced Christianity at all. Faith was in my heart because there were moments where I was very inquisitive and pondering at a very early age certain things that I don't think a lot of my own friends would sit and contemplate. And there were conversations I would bring up that I think kind of put a damper on the mood of the setting, you know? So I was very inquisitive about it.
So would you say that you were a spiritual person at a very young age?
Yes, I was, I guess you can say I was more aware than the people or my companions around me, just more aware of my environment, my surroundings, being, especially if I was by myself. I would basically just kind of question what was the purpose, like all of this existence and this fun and, you know, waking up and doing this routine and going to school and hanging out and then, you know, and then getting a career, getting this, getting that, and then eventually I'm going to die. So what was the point? So I always ended up with that last question was, what was the point? And I can never get past that. That's what I mean when I say there was always this type of emptiness when I was younger, that it wasn't filling that void of understanding what was going on. I was just kind of following the flow of what was around me.
Right. So then how did you come to learn about Islam?
So actually, it's quite amazing, alhamdulillah, because I remember that I made a dua when I was in my teens, and I didn't know it was a dua at the time. I didn't know what you called it. But I remember I was in a hardship, and I remember that I actually had a conversation with God. And even though we called ourselves Christians, I was never inclined to worshiping Jesus. It just didn't make any sense to me.
Right.
So when I spoke, I never directed my speeches to Jesus. So I remember being in a real difficult test or a real difficult situation. So I just basically had this real sincere conversation to God where I said, you know, if you do exist, if you are there and you can help me out of this situation, I promise I will do my best to find you. So it was this kind of commitment or this conversation I had. After that, alhamdulillah, the test was gone, or the hardship, you know, I overcame that hardship. And then I think it was maybe 6 months to a year, I came across, actually a friend gave me a copy of the Quran. And I was actually working and I was on break and I wanted to go home. My house wasn't very far from where I was. And I wanted to go home and get a book to read on my break. So they said, well, instead of going all the way home, why don't you just read this? And they handed me a copy of the Quran. And I said, well, what is this? And at that time, I had no idea what Islam was. I did not know Islam existed. So I said, what is this? And they said, it's the copy of the Quran. It was an English copy. The first thing I thought about was, okay, this is going to be hard to get through, because I've tried to get through the Bible and I could not get through the first couple of pages. It was very daunting to try to tackle the Bible. And I remember always trying and then just putting it aside and feeling very defeated. But when I took the Quran and I took it home, I spent the next probably week reading it nonstop. I couldn't put it down until I completed it. And I remember feeling this overwhelming, I can't explain it, this overwhelming happiness at having my questions answered. And that was what the Quran was doing. It was, when I asked, what was the point? The Quran was telling me, this is the point. What was my purpose? Here's your purpose. So it was clear, and it gave me every answer that I didn't find in Christianity. I couldn't find with my friends. I couldn't find in any other book. And so that was kind of the turning point that I knew this was the correct religion, or this is what I was looking for. And only later on, as I, became Muslim, did I realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered my dua that I made when I was a non-Muslim, that if you took me out of this hardship, I will try to find you. Like, please, guide me. So subhanallah, then I realized this was the answer.
SubhanAllah. So through the Quran is how your journey to learning about Islam started. So how did that lead up to you becoming Muslim?
So I actually went to a mosque. I found out it was called a mosque. I didn't even know it was called a mosque. I thought it was called, I called it a church when I first was inquiring about where to go. And so I found a mosque that was close to me, and there was a sister in the mosque. And it was funny because I had called and she was willing to meet me. And it was funny because my only experience of Islam prior to my conversion was seeing a couple of sisters in hijab. And I remember my mom and me were crossing the street, and she said something to me. She said, "Promise me you will never look like that." Two sisters that were passing, one was in a veil, one was in a hijab. And the reason she was saying that to me was because the group of friends that I was around was a very multicultural setting of friends, whereas my family really stuck to their own race, right? So it was a very different lifestyle growing up, and I was just very open to everyone, and I was very different. So I'm, the first to have different friends, the first to marry a different culture, the first to become Muslim. So I was always just very unique in the family. So I remember her saying, "Promise me you'll never look like that." And when she said that, I'm wearing, I'm having my mini skirt on, I'm having my hair out. I'm like, I'll never look like that. And so when I went to the masjid and I spoke to the sister to meet me outside of the masjid, and I saw the woman there walking around in it, then I connected, okay, so this is their faith. This is who those ladies that I saw, this is where they belong. And there was this willingness at such an early age too, as a teenager, this willingness to put the hijab on for the respect of the mosque. And so that's what I did. I had this willingness. She would wrap the hijab around me, and then I would go into the mosque, and I spent probably about a month meeting her every day in the mosque and asking her questions about Islam and about life and purpose. And she was very patient with me. She was very soft with me. And then there was just one day, I think my question was, so how do I become Muslim? And I never seen someone smile from ear to ear like I saw this sister smile that day. And so she said, "This is what you say." And I said it in the office, and then I said it again at Jama. So that was my conversion.
MashaAllah. So how old were you at this time?
17,
Oh, wow.
18.
17,
I'm around
18.
that age. Yeah, I was quite young. It doesn't take me long to make that initial movement. So
that decision.
I went right into taking my Shahada. And so I was at a public school. Within the weekend, I believe it was the following week, I registered to Madrasatul Banat, which was an all-girls Muslim school. So I had the experience of graduating from an all-girls Muslim school. Alhamdulillah.
Okay. So was this in Mississauga, Ontario?
I grew up in Toronto, and then we moved to a very small town, which was Oshawa, and that's why at an early age I moved there. Toronto is more multicultural, but going further out, you don't get exposed to a lot of things, right? So that's why I think I didn't learn a lot about Islam or just different cultures and things like that. And then when I became Muslim, I was in Toronto again, and then just decided that's it. I wanna be around people who love Allah. That was just my goal. I just wanted to surround myself by all the Muslims. And so the idea I had was just put yourself right into the environment and the school, and it was a great experience, alhamdulillah. And I still have my name on the plaque at the school that graduated from the Muslim school. And I did go back and have a visit when I'm older. And I remember one of the sisters said to me, "We always wondered who was this Melissa, because I'm the only Canadian name on that plaque.
Wow.
All of them are other Muslim names. We always wondered, who is this Melissa?"
They must have been like, who is this convert?
Exactly.
So, Melissa, how was your life like after you became Muslim? Were there more hardships? Was it easier? Did you have a lot of struggles? What was your life like as a Muslim?
Well, I guess I'll answer with, with hardship comes ease. So I would say both at the same time. I had my ease periods and I had my difficult moments, but they happened together. So knowing that this was the truth and diving into it and having that iman high was the ease part. That's what pulled me through the hardships. But I was met with, as soon as I took my Shahada, the hijab was on the first day. So like I said, I'm all in when I decide that I'm in. So the hijab was on. I didn't have to contemplate it or wait. But it was hard. It wasn't like it was putting it on was the most easiest thing, but I faced the challenges. I was rejected by my family for quite some time. They refused to go outside in public with what I was wearing.
So were you living at home at this time?
I wasn't living at home. Actually, what had happened is, after I converted, I was approached by a brother who wanted to marry. And so immediately, within probably the month, I was married. So now I'm outside of my home and I'm now married.
Wow.
So I'm a new Muslim. I'm newly married. And it was quite a lot to take in from the beginning. But it had its ease as well, because I didn't have to go back to living amongst my family. It would have been more difficult for me to do that. Alhamdulillah.
Right, totally understandable. So after you became Muslim, what kind of struggles, or what are some of the struggles you had to face with your family?
Yeah, my family has, they have a lot of, they have a racist background, I guess you could say. So there was multiple struggles. It wasn't just on the level of being a Muslim, but it was also on the level of marrying outside my race and, just so many different things. So I think converting, I remember having that conversation with my mom as well. I think I took my Shahada the night before, and then I called her the next day and I just said, guess what? And she said, what? And I said, I became Muslim. And she paused for a second and then she said, well, what's that? So I was saying to her, remember the ladies that we saw crossing the street and you told me don't be like them? I said, well, that's who I am. That's the religion I joined. So she paused for a second and then she asked me, are you wearing that thing on your head? And I said, yes. And so it was a lot of disapproval. She did say, I'm not going to go out with you in public like that. All my family said that. And for years, it was like a boycott, really. And I think they thought I was going through some kind of teenager phase after a few years, and they saw that I'm only just getting stronger in my faith, is when they started to come back and open that dialogue with me and wanted to start a relationship with me, but with the understanding of this is who I am. After I had my children and my children were growing up and I have daughters, I started, training my daughters that, to have the abaya, to wear the hijab, Islamic rituals and all this stuff. I met resistance from my family again, because they had accepted that I was doing it, but it was really hard for them to see my children start to do it, right? And I remember my mother, I went somewhere and I came back and I found both my daughters, like she had removed, their hijab, things like that. And they were young. I didn't even look at my mother at that point. I looked at my children and I just said, this is who we are. You don't remove this. And we had this conversation and my mother tried to say something, but I kind of just, I didn't even pay attention. I was more focused on teaching a lesson to my daughters. And after that, my family realized that they weren't able to put any of their own input into the way my daughters were growing up as well.
Wow, subhanAllah, what a journey. I like how you've educated your daughters saying this is who we are and you didn't sort of blame your mother for what she did. I think that is so solid and really mature of you, mashallah. So how are things now with your family?
So now, alhamdulillah, where we are today, my family has accepted who I am, have accepted who my children are. They love my kids. They find them very respectful kids. And over 13 years of doing dawah to my mother, she's finally taken her Shahada.
Really?
My two brothers, grandmother, alhamdulillah, 1 month before she passed away, took her Shahada.
Oh my
and
gosh,
so she
that's
died
amazing.
in the state of Islam.
SubhanAllah. Subhanallah, that is absolutely amazing. That just shows the power and the might of Allah and your patience and always making dua. That should really give us all some hope. So tell us, Melissa, how did you go about, dealing with your family and giving the da'wah? What kind of tips do you have for us? What's some key pointers, some really important advice for us converts when we're giving da'wah to our families?
So dawah, we're taught when we're giving dawah to have wisdom when giving dawah. So it's not always such a black and white way of doing it. You really have to know who you're talking to, who's your audience, right? Are they capable of understanding this, or do you have to arrange it in a way that can fit their understanding? So in my case, my family, I really had to be quick with my dawah. So I had to get in and get out as quickly as possible. They would not sit down for an hour lecture. They would not sit down for,
right, of course,
go to conferences with me. It was very quick. And sometimes I would use examples that would happen in their lives. So if someone passed away or someone got ill or some good came to them, I would say literally just a statement, something about Allah, or wow, this life, really at the end of it, we're just going to, pass away. It makes you think, or something like that would trigger maybe them to ask a question, and then I would wait. If they would ask, then I would give them more. If they didn't, then it was like a slip something in and then come back out again. And so that is what I did I think in the beginning when I first became Muslim though, like you said, this high man we get, we're just, military. Like over time, I realized there's a way to do this, and everyone has their certain way of coming to the fold of Islam, and it's not going to be the same way I came, right? And so dawah is a very delicate process too, right? It has to have wisdom and it has to be delicate. And some people need it really tough too. Some people need the answer right to the face, and some people you have to kind of go behind the scenes and do other things in order to bring it. So it's either through actions or soft statements, or sometimes it's just really direct. But it really, you have to understand who you're speaking to and get to know how they can receive what you're saying.
Right, 100% agree with you, and thank you so much for sharing those beneficial tips. So Melissa, I actually wanted to ask you earlier on, how did you feel when you took your Shahada?
I guess you can say relieved, free, and unity. Those are the three words that come to mind, because when I took my Shahada on the day of Jummah, I've never seen, after I took my Shahada, the whole mosque erupted in tears. And, just them saying, we're here for you, we're family. Just to see that, it was very overwhelming. And then being told that everything in my life, and mind you, I'm still young, I'm only 17, but there was quite a lot of stuff that I saw in my few years of existence, that I was free from all of it, that I was starting fresh. And to be told you're starting fresh is like you've just been given millions of dollars. And I almost felt like that heaviness had left my body, like it had come up through my body and then just exited the top of my shoulders or my head. And it was this weight I carried, and I wasn't carrying it anymore. And to not have that was the most beautiful thing. And I just remembered crying and knowing I was in the right place.
Subhanallah, that is so beautiful that you found that at such a young age. When everyone is just starting to find themselves and try to search for their true purpose in life. Alhamdulillah, you found it at that age. So since you converted at such a young age, were you able to find sisterhood? Was sisterhood important to you at that time?
So I think for me, I always was searching out for people that I felt was close to Allah. I remember this one particular sister, I just felt like Noor came off her face. I was so like, wow, I just want to be around her. I want to be around people that are going to remind me of Allah. So for me, it was, I would say, surround yourself with people that are going to help you grow in faith, and they're genuine and they're sincere with their worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They can know where you are, what your struggles are, and they're very supportive. Alhamdulillah, it's not about the quantity of the number of sisters you have, but it's about the quality of the relationship. And I mean, over the years, I've met quite a few sisters, but there's only been special ones that Allah has put into my life that have been there from when I was a teenager until now. So I've got bonds of friends, for 20 years, and we studied the deen together. There's one in particular, we finished our Islamic university together. We studied another 4 years of Quran together. And so this is a beautiful friendship of, if you're going to partner and study the deen together, and we've grown together, our children have grown together, and these are blessings that I see. Even if it's just one person in your life, and it's such a beautiful relationship like that, it is definitely a blessing that Allah can put someone like that in your life. So sisterhood is important, definitely, but you want to make sure they're helping you grow and you're helping them grow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right, exactly. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Do you have any final thoughts or words, or just some general advice for our sisters listening in on today?
The advice that I wish that was given to me was that, first of all, Islam is a lifetime of learning. We're not going to be able to to learn everything in an overnight overview of it, and to take your time and to study and learn what your relationship is with your creator. And that's the most important thing, is that foundation, which is Tawheed. So when someone comes to Islam, it's not about the fiqh, it's not about the rules in the moment.
Right.
It's about building your relationship to Allah and making sure that that's solid. And what does that look like? And once you have that, all the rules will come by default, because you have developed this relationship, this love, and it comes as a default. You want to do these things, right? I think what happens sometimes when sisters revert, and I know that from my own experience, the community has great intentions of giving their advices, but what we don't understand is that, there are differences in opinions, there are cultural differences that we as reverts sometimes don't know how to filter right at the beginning.
Right.
And so there's all this different information coming at you, because they're just looking for a simple answer, but they're getting, multiple different avenues. And so it's very overwhelming. What I like to say to them is, shut all that out. And your goal right now is to understand what your relationship, who is Allah? What is your responsibilities towards your God? What does He do for you as your creator? And focus on developing that love. And when that love comes, then all the rules will start to come into your life, and you'll do them very easily, and you'll do them with love and willingness, and not just feeling like, oh, I have to do this because everyone else is doing this. And I've seen way too many sisters who approach it that way and only can do it for so long, and then they take steps back, or sometimes even leave the fold of Islam because they felt overwhelmed. And every time I feel a sister leaves the fold of Islam, the first thing that comes to my mind is, she didn't understand Tawheed correctly. She
100%.
She didn't develop that relationship. That's why she left. So that would be my advice. And that would be, if I ever had to go back and say, what would I change? I would change my expectations of myself, and I would be soft with myself, and I would say, take it easy. You can develop this relationship and take your time and move at your own pace. And when you're adding things into your life, Islamic, rulings or changes, make sure it's coming from your heart. Make sure this is something that you are convinced and you want to do for Allah, and you are ready, so that it can be something that's consistent for the rest of your life, and not phases because you're not ready, but you want it to be ready. So make
Right.
sure you're ready and your heart is strong in it. So that would be my advice.
Thank you, Sister Melissa, for joining us today again and sharing your story, your journey with us. I think because you've been Muslim for quite some time now, I think your experiences will be really beneficial to help all the new Muslims and even convert sisters. You know, after 13 years of doing da'wah, like some of your family members became Muslim, it gives us all some hope that, you know, Allah can guide our families too with patience and dua. And of course, wisdom. Our families also have a chance to become Muslim, inshallah.
So inshallah, I hope my advice is gonna benefit sisters that are new to Islam or have been Muslim for a while, or those looking to become Muslim, inshallah. I just want to say Jazakallah khairan for having me on your podcast. I think you're doing an amazing job with sharing these sisters' stories. I think they're inspirational, alhamdulillah, and I got to be a part of that. So I'm really grateful, alhamdulillah. So Jazakallah khairan, sister. Assalamualaikum.
Wa iyaki. And inshallah, anyone who listens to this episode will surely benefit by the permission of Allah. And there you have it, ladies. I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. This is Khadija and Melissa signing off. Assalamualaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you everyone for tuning in on today's episode. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram and join the community over at thecamelliasbloom.podcast. If you have feedback or you want to be a guest on the show and share your story, or even if you just need some support and you just need someone to talk to, please don't hesitate to email me at thecamelliasbloom.podcast@gmail.com. Assalamualaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.